I Am the Great Horse, Chapter 31, Bucephala, 326 to 324 BC. Victory? I do not like the horse doctor. Every time he comes to see me, he does something to me that hurts. I want to tell him to go away, but my legs won't work and I can barely make flat ears. He's still scared of me, though. He makes Charm put my muzzle on me and sit on my head while he's treating me. Also, he's useless because he hasn't found the arrowhead buried behind my elbow. It's trapped beneath me, and it hurts all the time. I think I'm lying on a flattened tent. There is another tent stretched over poles and tied down at the corners to form a makeshift stall around me. The rain splatters noisily overhead and drips hit my legs. I can hear my friends whinnying in the distance, but I do not have the strength to whinny back. I can still smell the river, though I am no longer by the ford where I collapsed. I can remember sliding through the mud between two mules who complained at my weight but dragged me behind them all the way up the hill. Before they were led away, they lowered their noses and blew at me in sympathy. Mules aren't so bad after all. Charm has not left my side since Alexander brought me back to camp. Tityos brings her food and my medicine while she strokes my nose and whispers to me. She keeps it up all day and night, which is a bit annoying because I'm very tired. Charm says this is how we dominated the Indians at the river Jhelum. Indian dead, 23,000, including Porus's son. Macedonian dead, 14,000, including Prince Aucus. Horses dead, 3,000, almost including me. Elephants dead, 120. Prisoners, Prince Porus and 10,000 Indian slaves for building work. I do not care. I'd like to leave my body and mutual groom with Borealis, who is waiting patiently beside me. But every time I start to drift through the dark clouds towards his ghost, Charm's voice tugs me back. As soon as the men have recovered from the battle, Alexander's taking them to find the edge of the world, she tells me. It's not far from here. Then he'll bring back some magic water from the Eastern Ocean to make you better. He's building a city here to celebrate our victory over the Indians, and Demetrius is going to be left in command of the garrison, so we'll be all right. Did she say city? It must be my city this time. And Craterus is building a fleet to take us all home when Alexander gets back. The scientists think the river Jhelum might take us back to Egypt because they found some Egyptian reeds growing on the bank. So even if you can't walk by then, we could put you on a boat and sail you to the big city in Alexandria in Egypt, and from there across the sea to Pella. We'll be home before you know it. Bucephalus, and Alexander's promised you can retire in the mare pasture. I'm too tired to think about mares. What's my city called? So many men died here, Bucephalus. Everyone's sick of the fighting. Roxanne says Alexander took Prince Aucus into the battle on purpose to get him killed. I don't know if that's true. A corner of my shelter blows loose in a sudden gust, and Charm breaks off to stare at it. Borealis is standing out there in the night, looking in. I manage a small nicker, and Charm jumps up at once. She brings me herb-smelling water and holds the bucket under my nose so I can drink. Are you thirsty, Bucephalus? Are you hungry? You must eat. She takes away the bucket and brings me a handful of barley mash soaked in honey, which I lick from her palm to please her. She gulps down a sob and strokes my cheek. Oh, I know Prince Porus is Alexander's prisoner, and the new city's going to be called Nike, which means victory, but it feels like we've lost. None of the men are partying. They're just drinking to forget the battle. I think those elephants frightened them almost as much as they frightened you poor horses, and Caspia got poor Aucus killed. It's my fault. It was a mistake to teach her those silly tricks. Even Alexander's guard has had enough. They're going to try to talk Alexander into going home, but I hope he finds the edge of the world first. Otherwise you won't get your magic water to make you better. I hear no more. My eyes have closed and my head is back on the ground, surrounded by dark clouds. Alexander called his new city Nike? What do I have to do to get a city named after me? My own worst enemy. The next time the clouds clear from my head, everything is much quieter and Charm is not with me. I'm still lying under my shelter, although the sides have been tied back. It has stopped raining. The sun streams in a golden haze. I can see barefoot Indians piling up mud bricks to dry. Boats ferry them across the river to build the foundations of the new city. Borealis is grazing nearby. When he sees I'm awake, he whinnies and trots over. He sniffs my nose, and as he does this, something black charges out of my blind spot, and I hear Indus's brazen little squeal. The colt rears and strikes out at Borealis with his small hooves. His ghost vanishes. Indus comes back to earth and paws my shoulder. I raise my head and flatten my ears to tell him to leave me alone, and pain shoots through me. In the distance, Aura whinnies anxiously. Indus will not give up. He nudges me with his nose and keeps pawing the ground, shaking his mane. Charm comes running back. Shoo, she says, waving her arms at Indus. Go back to your mother, you silly colt. Bucephalus is sick. He doesn't want you bothering him. Indus keeps trying to get his nose under my elbow, where the arrowhead is buried. It has been swelling for some time now, and it feels hard and tight. I move, and a shooting pain goes through me as the wound explodes, splattering my colt's nose with pus. He leaps back with a squeal, raises his head, and curls his upper lip. Charm stares at him in amazement. Then she lies down and pushes her hand under me. She brings it out, smeared in pus and blood. Oh, Zeus, she whispers. Oh, Bucephalus, you're wounded and it's infected. That horse doctor's useless. I'm going to go get help. Wait here. I'm not going anywhere, believe me. She races off, and I drift back into the dark clouds because moving took all the strength from me. Men come back with Charm and tie lead reins around my lead reins. She takes my tail and pulls. Between them, they roll me over. More pain shoots through me, and I neigh in terror. Borealis is watching me again, his ears pricked. But at least Indus has gone back to his mother. There's a horrible smell. I think it's me. When the clouds clear once more, Charm is sponging my arrow wound, and I hear Demetrius's voice. Looks like it's gone deep. It could have hit his lung, which would explain why he's having trouble breathing. This climate's bad for wounds. He pauses and says gently, The horse is 30 years old, Charmea. That's like one of us being 90. It'd be kinder to put him down. No! Charm spreads her arms across me. Alexander will be back soon with the magic water from the edge of the world. Bucephalus will get better then. He will! Demetrius sighs. Charmea, you must know this immortality thing is just a story. Alex is extremely unlikely to find the water of life in India, even if such an elixir exists. It's just something he told the men to make them follow him further east. The Amazons were supposed to be a story too, weren't they? Charm says stubbornly, her eyes glittering with tears. Her hand drops to her dagger. I won't let you kill Bucephalus. Demetrius shakes his head. Maybe if we'd seen his wound earlier. Sometimes this horse is his own worst enemy. The horse doctor was obviously too scared to examine him properly. I don't know who you're going to find to remove the arrowhead. I've just had one like it dug out of my thigh, so I know how much it hurts. But it'll have to come out, or he hasn't a chance of surviving until Alex gets back. If he comes back. I have a feeling the edge of the world is a lot farther than he's told everyone it is. I can't see their faces, but when Charm speaks again, her whisper sounds scared. He's got to come back. He promised. He'll come back for Bucephalus. We can't let him die so far from home. We can't. Demetrius says softly, I'll help you if you're determined to try. You'll need something to sew up the wound afterward. These Indian arrows are barbed like a spiny leaf, so you have to cut deep. You can't just pull. I'll show you the one that came out of my leg so you know. Bucephalus isn't going to like it much. He's still got a spark of life in him, the brave old horse. He'll let me do it, Charm whispers, stroking my nose. He's got to. It hurt more than you can imagine. More than being branded. More than a spiked bit. More than a whip. More than, I imagine, that Scythian thing the Persians did to poor Zoroaster. No, maybe not more than that. But Charm whispered to me all the time, and Demetrius sat on my head to keep me still. The arrowhead came out with lots of pus and infected flesh. Then Charm sewed up the wound and put herb paste on it. As she cleaned her dagger, Borealis's ghost breathed down her neck. Charm frowned and looked around. I tried to warn Borealis to keep away from her, but the effort was too much, and the dark clouds smothered me once more. Demetrius ordered the slaves to build a stable for me on this side of the river. At some stage, I assume the mules dragged me into it. I don't remember that part. But I know I'm out of the heat and lying in a deep bed of straw when I smell Alexander's sherbet sweetness again. The edge of the world. I flare my nostrils, which is about all I can manage now. Aura and Indus are munching hay in the next stall. Caspia is next to them, thrown out of the army in disgrace, her mane shaved off in mourning for Prince Acchus. Borealis stands in the empty stall on my other side. He doesn't need hay because he's a ghost. Charm is curled up in her cloak next to me, sound asleep. She's been awake all night talking to me, and she's exhausted. Outside, men shout and laugh. Trumpets blare and horses whinny to their friends, all the familiar noises of our huge herd making camp. It sounds as if they have won another battle, but when Alexander walks into the stable, there is no light of victory shining around him. His mane is stuck to his head where his helmet has squashed it. His white cloak is grubby. His eyes shift nervously from side to side, as if he's looking for Borealis's ghost. He peers over my door, pauses a moment, then lets himself in. Bucephalus, he sighs, stroking my cheek. So it's true you waited for me. Oh, horse. Where did it all go wrong? Charm starts, awake. Seeing Alexander, she scrambles to her feet and bursts out, Did you find it? Then she blushes and kneels in the straw to kiss the king's dirty toes. Alexander gives her the same sort of look he gave me. Get up, Charmides, he says in a weary tone. There's no one to see you do proskynesis here except the horses, and who are they going to tell? The edge of the world is farther than I thought. My men are cowards. We found another river as wide as the Jhelum, and they got scared they'd find more Indians and war elephants on the other side. They refused to follow me across. I'd have gone on alone if they didn't need me so much. I am their god and their king, and kings and gods are not free to do things like that. You don't know how lucky you are, just being a groom. Sir? She says, staring at him wide-eyed. I'm telling you I didn't find it, Alexander snaps. Don't you understand? There's no magic water. There's no immortality. The oracle in Siwa lied to me. My army wants to go home. I've shown them the wonders of the world, and all they want to do is crawl back to their pathetic little farms and families. Their ambitions are so small, Charmides, so small. One of old Parmenio's old officers led the revolt. He dared tell me that the sign of a great man is knowing when to stop. I should have gotten rid of all the old guard when I got rid of old Parmenio. Now it's too late. I can hardly execute my entire army, can I? He presses his knuckles to his forehead. I'm not taking them back to Macedonia, if that's what they think. I'm going to make another court out here in the east. Perhaps at Susa or Babylon, somewhere I can keep a careful eye on my empire. And I'm going to replace Antipater back in Macedonia. I know he's been plotting behind my back for years. I'll just have to rethink things a bit. Energy glimmers around him again as he starts planning his new empire, but Charm is not listening. No magic water, she whispers, looking at me. But Bucephalus. Alexander takes a deep breath. I know. The old horse is dying. I'm surprised he held on this long after what the horse doctor told me. An arrow in his lung? He didn't dare take it out. Said it would kill him for sure at his age. The Amazons might have helped him, but they've gone home. He mutters something about the edge of the world, then says, Did you know there's a Queen Penthesilea in the Iliad, too? In the very last line, she comes to help Troy and does battle with Achilles, who is supposed to have killed her. I've been wondering about their country and whether the tales about them being immortal can be true, but I expect Amazons pass the same names down through generations just like we do, and the reason no one can find their land is because it's so small and insignificant. He shakes his head at me and says more gently, I'll mount an expedition when we get back as far as the Caspian Sea. But even if the Amazons do know the secret of immortality, it's too late for Bucephalus now. I took out the arrow, Charm says, so quietly the king doesn't take it in at first. Alexander keeps muttering about the Iliad and the edge of the world, perhaps being in a different place from where he'd thought, but Charm's words finally get his attention. You took it out? Charm bites her lip. Me and Commander Demetrius. Bucephalus is no better, though. She pauses and asks in a small voice, Will you let me go and find the Amazons, sir? If Tydeus stays here to look after Bucephalus, I could maybe take Aura and some of your men. Alexander's face softens. He fingers Charm's mane. Ah, Charmides, Charmea, you're so faithful. I know you'd go to the ends of the earth to save the old horse if you could. You've got more loyalty in these few hairs than most of my men have in their entire body. He lets the curl fall against her flushed neck, but it's out of the question. I need all my men, and I need Tydeus to look after the other horses. Charm's face twists. What about me? Alexander sighs. I'm not going to make you leave Bucephalus, don't worry. The old horse deserves a friend at his side when he dies. But he obviously can't travel in that state, and we're leaving as soon as the fleet is ready. We won't be back this way, so I release you. You're free. I'll give you 3 talents to help you start your new life and papers to say you're a free citizen of the empire under my protection. When the old horse is gone and you want to go home, show them at any Macedonian garrison and they'll give you food and shelter for as long as you need and an escort when you're ready to move on. Charm stares at him. You're freeing me? The king smiles. Can't have my half-sister remain a slave all her life, can I? Charm sucks in her breath. All the blood drains from her face. Then, although Alexander has told her not to, she does proskynesis before him. Forgive me, your majesty. I didn't know how to tell you. I wanted to, but there was never a right time. I thought you'd be angry with me and make me leave Bucephalus. Oh, forgive me. She's face down on the ground beside me, so she doesn't see Alexander's expression, which is a cross between puzzlement and sorrow. He gives Borealis's ghost a quick look. Get up, Charmea, he says in his weary tone. It's hardly your fault my mortal father raped your mother after the battle at Methone, is it? I've known who you are ever since I captured the horsemaster in Sogdiana. General Parmenio knew as well, apparently, but he kept it from me. I was right to have him executed. If I was going to punish you for lying to me, I'd have done that long before now. It's worse than that, sir, Charm breathes. trembling as she peers up at him. You still don't know why I went to Pella. I hated King Philip for what he'd done to my mother. I had poison in a mule's hoof. Enough, Alexander says, cutting her off with an impatient hand. I know all about that too. Queen Ada told me in her last letter. I think she was worried what I might do if I found out from someone else. Demetrius has asked to stay on here, so he'll look after you. I'm also going to leave the old horse master with you, since you've been so reluctant to let me kill him. That's how I know you weren't involved in my mortal father's murder. You can't bear to see anyone suffer, can you? Not even your worst enemy. But I'm sure you'll decide a suitable fate for him eventually, even if it's just leaving him to rot in his cage. Tell Demetrius when you do, and he'll carry out your orders as if they were my own. Before we leave, I'm going to give Bucephalus a funeral grander than any horse has ever had. This stable looks good here, so I'll build a new city around it, in his memory. Call it Bucephala, so no one will forget how brave he was. Charm's eyes filled with tears. Borealis looks questioningly at me over the partition. I find a sudden surge of strength and give him flat ears. Bucephala! My city! Mine! Borealis is going to have to wait a bit longer for me to join him. I want to see what my city looks like when it's finished. Healing. I didn't see my funeral, although the smell of burning flesh got everywhere, even in my stall. Charm said they used the pyre to burn the bodies of all the horses and men who had died from their wounds, while Alexander was off looking for the edge of the world, so no one noticed that mine wasn't among them. There were guards around my stable to keep everyone away, and the men were too excited about going home to take much notice of the building works. Tityos had not forgotten us, though. The day the fleet set sail, he came into my stall and stroked my cheek. He's no better, is he? He said. Are you sure you want to stay behind, Charm? You can still travel home with us, even though King Alexander has freed you. I wouldn't want you to stay here. It rains too much. You dolt. That's only a couple of months a year. It's sunny now, isn't it? Tityos made a face. I'll write to you with all the gossip. You'd better wait till we get somewhere more friendly before you write back, though, or your scrolls might never reach me. Can you remember the letters Prince Ochus taught you? Charm smiled. I'll practice. I won't have much else to do. She gazed at him, and he gazed back. Tityos. No soppy stuff. Tityos stood up with a grin. This isn't goodbye. You can come after us as soon as Bucephalus, when it's over. And if you don't, I'm coming back here to find you just as soon as I've saved up enough money to buy my freedom and some mares to start my horse farm. King Alexander might have let you go, but you can't escape from me that easy. Charm started to laugh, caught her breath, and rummaged in her bedroll. You can have the gold Alexander gave me. I don't need it. Nor do I. He fended her off, still grinning. The king's still giving out bonuses. I'll be rich soon enough. You keep it till you've got enough to buy a decent stallion, and we'll start our horse farm together. Then, finally, it was peaceful again. At least as peaceful as it could be with a city being built around us. When Alexander had gone, Charm tried everything she could think of to make me better. She brought me a procession of local wise men to my stable, and they gave her foul-smelling pastes to put on my wound and weird things to put in my food. None of these cures worked, mainly because I would not touch my feed if it smelled suspicious. Ugh. I grew weaker because I wouldn't eat. Eventually, in desperation, Charm went to the only knowledgeable person in Bucephala she had not so far asked for advice. By now, I'm too far gone to realize what she's doing, and lie on my side with my eyes closed. But when the old horsemaster limps into my stall and his smell reaches me, my body does a strange thing. It breaks into a sweat and twitches, and one of my hind legs kicks out. I haven't done that for a long time. It hurts. Don't worry, Bucephalus, Charm murmurs, coming to kneel at my head. The horsemaster's here to help you. I've promised him his freedom in exchange for making you better. He knows a lot about horses. Be sensible and let him examine you. Charm has brought my enemy into my stall. My hind leg twitches again. In my heart, I am rearing and kicking to keep him away from Charm, but my body remains lying in the straw. I roll my eye at him. The horsemaster leans on his crutch and stares down at me. He is dirty and thin, and his whiskers have grown even longer than before. He wears a good cloak, though, over his ragged tunic. Well, Charm whispers, looking up at him. Can you cure him? What if I can't? Growls my enemy, sending more sweat washing over me. He glances at the two guards in the passage. Are you going to order me locked back in that cage and tortured to death as punishment? No, Charm says quietly. I told you. Alexander said it's my decision, so you'll go free whatever happens, even if Bucephalus dies. But you've got to try. Look at him. He's fought this long and he's so brave. I have to try everything I can to save him. The horsemaster looks at me with narrowed eyes, making me tremble with bad memories. He prods me with his crutch and grunts. This horse is suffering. You should have put him down months ago. You haven't even examined him. I don't need to. Anyone can see he's dying. He's 30 years old for Zeus's sake. You're crazy, keeping him alive so long. The king's already led his funeral procession. He's a lost cause. I'll do it for you, if you can't stomach the deed yourself, which you obviously can't. That's the trouble with letting a girl do a man's job. Tears spring to Charm's eyes. Are you sure he's suffering? She whispers. Is there nothing we can do? The horsemaster makes a face. Nothing, except a sword through the heart. Charm bows her head and strokes my sweaty neck. Then I'll see to it, she whispers. You can go. The horsemaster shakes his head as his guards escort him to the door. He keeps looking back at Charm and me, as if afraid it's a trick. I relax slightly as his smell fades. But just as my enemy reaches the door, there is excited shouting outside. A Macedonian sentry races past, shouting, "The king's dying! A messenger just arrived from one of the rebel fortresses downriver. King Alexander led a charge over the wall, and only 3 men followed him. The scaling ladders broke. An arrow pierced his lung. Bucephalus covered him with the Achilles shield, but the king's dying. King Alexander's dying." The horsemaster blinks at his guards, and a slow smile spreads across his face. They look at each other, wide-eyed, and hurry off after the sentry. Alexander stares after them in dismay. Charm stares after them in dismay, while I look around nervously for Alexander's ghost. I don't see it, though. Charm takes a trembly breath and continues to stroke me. No, she whispers. It can't be true. We'd know if the horse bond broke. The horsemaster limps back to my stall and looks down at Charm. Hear that, girl groom? Alexander's finally gone and gotten himself killed. When this news spreads, there's going to be no safe place this side of the Hellespont. I'm getting out of here, but I'm going to need a horse and someone to look after me. My health hasn't improved any in that cage the king kept me in, so you're coming with me. Before Charm realizes what he intends, he seizes her wrist and wraps the lead rein around it. She gasps, "Stop it! What are you doing? I'm a free citizen now. King Alexander's not dead. When he hears of this, he'll come back here and kill you." "I doubt it," the horsemaster growls, lashing her wrists together. "And you're not free anymore. The document the king gave you isn't worth the papyrus it's written on now that he's dead. You owe me for wrecking my career back in Pella. Who's going to care what happens to a common groom when the world's falling apart around them?" "No!" Charm cries, struggling, frightened now. "I know I made you lose your job, but I made up for it. I stopped Alexander from executing you, and I've set you free. You promised to help Bucephalus. You promised. Help! Guard!" But the guards have gone to spread the awful news and do not hear her cries. The horsemaster tears a strip off his ragged tunic and stuffs it into Charm's mouth. Charm tries to reach her dagger with her bound hands, but the horsemaster snatches it away from her and holds the point at her cheek. "Shut up and stop struggling, slave," he hisses, "or I'll mark this pretty cheek of yours with a permanent scar. Now, Bucephalus obviously isn't going to be much use to us, so we'll take that gray mare. Nice colt. It can run behind us." He drags Charm to her feet and marches her out into the passage where he loops her leash around a hook. Then he seizes Aura's bridle and opens her stall. There's so much noise outside now, no one can hear what's happening in the stables. The horsemaster's trying to get the bridle on Aura, who thinks he has come to threaten her colt and gives him flat ears in the fierce way of a mare, protecting her foal. Indus squeals and rears bravely. The horsemaster growls and hits him with his crutch. Indus squeals again, this time in pain, and races back behind his mother. Charm makes a muffled sound of protest and tries to get her gag off. My colt and my favorite groom hurt. My favorite mare about to be stolen. Something stirs inside me. I make a huge effort and roll over, put my forelegs under me, and sit up. Borealis's ghost stares at me in surprise and fades a little. With a massive heave, I'm on my feet. My legs tremble, but I'm much thinner than I was, so they just about support me. I stagger out the open door of my stall, make myself huge, and squeal in rage. The horsemaster looks around. His eyes go wide. "Impossible," he breathes. That is the last word he ever says. Aura, furious because he hit her colt, rears up and hits him on the back of the head with her hoof. He stumbles out into the passage, dazed, and I take a chunk out of his neck with my teeth. He tastes horrid. The effort of making myself huge finally catches up with me, and I crash down on him with my full weight. Bones crunch. He thrashes a little, then his ghost shimmers away from under me, and he lies still. I am puffing as much as if I had carried Alexander into battle. Charm finally gets her leash free of the hook and tears off her gag. "Stay there, Bucephalus," she cries, stumbling out into the night. "I'll fetch help." Aura calms down. She whinnies, first to her colt, then to me. Indus whinnies back. Caspia neighs to me, and I manage a tiny nicker to tell them I'm all right. Aura's door is still open. She walks around and sniffs me to check that I'm not dead. I can see her more clearly now. Indus sniffs me too. I raise my head and reach for a mouthful of hay. It is good. I'm hungry again. That is how Charm finds us when she comes back with the guards. They look at the horsemaster's broken body and shake their heads. Then they look at me and shake their heads again. "I'd never have believed it," says one. "The old horse has come alive again." "I don't reckon King Alexander's really dead neither," says the other. "I reckon we should wait till we have proof. You know how he always looks like he'll never recover, then comes out of his pavilion laughing at us all for being so worried about him. Zeus only knows what he'd do to us if he heard we'd abandoned our posts." Charm is not listening. She kneels beside me with her arm over my neck, pushing Indus's curious nose away and patting me so hard I'm afraid she'll knock me over again. "The horsemaster did heal you," she says, laughing and crying at the same time. "He really did. You hated him so much you came back to life to save me. Oh, Bucephalus, oh, old horse, don't you ever scare me like that again." Gossip from Tityos. My city, I have to admit, proved disappointing. It was brown and crowded with small mud brick houses and narrow streets and the usual noise and smells. But on the riverbank the men had built a big statue of me with Alexander on my cloth, rearing into the Indian sky. Ha! They won't forget us in a hurry. The rumors of Alexander's death proved false, as the horse bond had already told us. Over the next year, Charm received regular letters from Tityos and read them to me while I was recovering. Most of them were soppy nickers and whinnies, but he wrote some groom gossip too. Alexander recovered from his arrow wound and dominated all the Indian fortresses on his way downriver to teach them he was still boss. The river didn't lead to Egypt like the scientists said it would, but to a horrible desert where 60,000 people and 3,000 horses died, including poor Xanthus, and the men had to eat mules because they ran out of supplies. They must have been desperate, that's all I can say. When the army eventually reached Susa, the Macedonians took Persian wives in a mass marriage. King Alexander married one of Archas's sisters, which made Roxanne hate him even more. Tityos got promoted to horsemaster. Charm gripped this last letter tightly, a big smile on her face. Hear that, Bucephalus? Tityos has been made royal horsemaster. He says the army's on its way back to Ecbatana. You're strong enough to travel now. We can meet him there. Tityos? Royal horsemaster? It's a good thing we're going back because I am getting seriously worried about my rider's sanity.